Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to crumble!
I'm Joshua Kemble, and welcome to Joshua Kemble's Livestream. I've been a freelance illustrator and graphic designer for over 20 years. I was an art director for 9 years. And when I'm not art directing and working on illustrations and graphic designs, I'm working on comic books and graphic novels, and that's usually what I do during my streams. And while conversations can go all over the place on this stream, from spicy and entertaining to goofy and silly, one thing stays consistent throughout every stream. I'll always be working on art. So pull up a chair, get your art supplies out, and get ready for an entertaining show that'll keep you company while you work on your own personal art projects. This is Joshua Kemble's Art Stream. All right, welcome to the stream. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. I am Joshua Kemble. I'm going to be working on comics. I have been working on comics pretty much throughout the weekend, all the way to yesterday. And so I've gotten quite a few pages of two stories, of Not Death But Love, the strange supernatural story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning done. But tonight I am planning on working on shading page 174 of Not Death But Love, the strange supernatural story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and possibly coloring it. We'll see how long the stream goes. But yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so here's the page I'm shading, and I'm just getting in there and shading it. So while I shade, maybe I'll talk a little bit about stuff I've been up to. I have been listening to the audiobook The Daemon and the Soul of the West by Bernardo Kastrup, because I saw an interview with him, like a discussion with him. I think it was on Alex O'Connor's channel. It was just a really interesting premise, like his philosophy. So I kind of want to dig deeper into it, and it's been pretty interesting, pretty weird, kind of, I don't know, philosophy is always fascinating to me. And I'm not really good at like paraphrasing philosophies or whatever, but I think his basic premise that's interesting. And by the way, I'm going to be shading these pages and kind of seeing how far we go. Also, I forgot to say, happy upcoming Thanksgiving to everybody. I know most of you guys are probably on a Thanksgiving break, I would imagine. Tankersley said, you now have 1 like. Thank you, Tankersley. I appreciate that. Anyhow, so like the Daemon and the Soul of the West is an interesting book where it's basically like, so far, I'm not through it yet. I'm not through the entire thing. I'm on like the last 2 chapters. But the premise is it's interesting. I was expecting more of like a heavy philosophy book, but I'm guessing that this one is more of a like musing on the purpose of life based on what the philosophy suggests. But what I thought was really interesting about it was he started talking about kind of the idea that the mind of nature or whatever. This is his idea, but that we're actually, his idea is like the extend, like if you extend to reality, just the premise, if you start looking at reality from the premise that it's a mind rather than matter behind the mind, that it's mind behind the matter, that it can kind of shape your way of living and your philosophy, and possibly shape science as well. It's a weird concept, but it's interesting. He has a way of wording things to where they're quite compelling arguments. But what I have found really fun about it is this later half of the book where he starts talking about like the idea of the daemon, not demon, but the daemon, like, which is like this old mythological idea of pretty much like the muse, like the thing that drives people to pursue things that aren't even within their own best interests, but seem to be fulfilling like a greater purpose or like the interest of nature itself. And you know, as an artist, I get suckered into that stuff because I do really think that the older I get, the more I realize I don't know if I have a choice in making comics. I think I'm just going to make comics. I think that's just kind of who I am. It's like, it's something I'm kind of called to do. I don't know why. But I'm just doing this thing like out of compulsion. Like it's something I have to do. I don't know if that makes sense. Like outside of, I'm not getting a lot of monetary benefit from it, but it is something that I feel inspired and led to do in a weird way. So because I've experienced that in my own life, any philosophy that starts getting into inspiration or the muse, I think is pretty fascinating to me. So I'm interested to see where his philosophy goes. But so far, really interesting. I hadn't heard of him before, a week ago. I probably should have. It sounds like he's a pretty impactful philosophy guy. So there was that. I watched some travel vlogs while I was working. And then I realized I should be vlogging. I haven't done a live stream in a long time. So I was like, you know what? I'm working on comics. I'm going to be up late. So I'm going to hang with you guys for a little bit, see how that goes, and see how far we can get in the comics realm. And so that's basically what the plan is today. I've also been continually recording music, so I laid out a bass track for the fourth track for whatever I do next, and that's been really inspiring and fun too. And then there's some term papers and stuff that I have to work on later in the week, which I'm not looking forward to. But I'm trying to just kind of bust through as many comic pages as I can. In the meantime, because it's getting close to crunch time on these books. On this book's deadline, so I want to get through as much of it as I can. So we're getting there. We're getting there just a little bit. Starting with the main figure. So it's pretty funny. My dogs are on a very regular schedule, but my wife's out of town visiting family, and I chose to stay back so that I can kind of just blast through comics like a madman. And what was funny was the the dogs are on such like a kind of regular 9 to 5 schedule that it was about an hour ago. They came up to me and were just kind of like, we're ready to go to bed. So I had to let them in the room because they sleep in our bed. But I had to let them in our room and let them kind of hop up there and fall asleep because they just were like, I'm not doing this staying up late thing. It's kind of cute. They have like their kind of their own little schedule. But what's neat about it is it actually kind of keeps me in line too, with like kind of waking up at a decent time and getting to bed at a somewhat decent time. Just because they're kind of on such a normal clock. And they'll kind of let me know. They'll be like, dude, it's time to feed us. It's time to go on a walk. But that was nice. I took them on a walk today. Around the block, and it was interesting because it's like there's nothing. Okay, if you keep your dogs off leash, that really pisses me off. Like, because like we're going on a walk and the dogs are doing fine and stuff, and then this dog just comes at us. Like, you know, he's off leash. Somebody has their garage door open, and they just left their backyard door open too, so that the dog could just kind of roam around. And that dog kind of went at us. It was nerve wracking. And I was like, oh my gosh, like get a leash on your dog. Am I an old man now where I'm just complaining about, and people whose pets don't have leashes, this is not okay? I don't know. Anyhow. So, that was the wild entertainment of the day. And then aside from that, I have just been, like I said, crunch time, thinking about art, thinking about comics, kind of listening to stuff as I work. Just kind of getting in finishing mode, you know, like it's hardcore, time to get this done mode. Which basically just looks like working all day on these things, but it's fun. Tankersley said, "Your damn kids, get out of my yard." It was more like, why is your dog off leash and trying to murder my dogs as we're walking around the neighborhood? Like that's kind of not cool. I think that's a reasonable request. Anyhow, yeah, it's been a nice few days off though. I feel like I've had pretty good productivity so far. I've only managed to get a page done a day. I got these pencils done today, and I'm hoping to kind of be able to at least maintain a page a day. On my time off, but ideally it'd be nice if I could get through more than a page a day, and we'll just kind of have to see how that goes. How are you doing, Tankersley? I get in these weird zones where when I'm like deep in my work, like getting, you know, high page counts pumped out and stuff, it's harder for me to like really think about much else but the work itself. Tankersley said a page a day is pretty good. Well, it's good, except it's not sustainable outside of my Thanksgiving break. You know, that's the problem. Yeah, I'm aiming for it. I hope that's good, but I feel like I should be able to output a little more. So, we shall see. A lot of it's just like a test of will and patience, because it is just Monday. And so if I kind of keep up this productivity, I think I'll be doing pretty good for the week. But yeah, so one thing about cartooning that I love that that I feel like sometimes kind of falls by the wayside in the discussion about art and stuff like that is cartooning is not really a social thing. It's like you probably wouldn't get into doing art if you weren't kind of in the habit of like having these moments where you can just kind of sit down, get into flow state and work and kind of let your mind wander and you know, have long periods of no communication with the outer world, that kind of thing. So it's been pretty fun this weekend because it kind of has reminded me of like life, early comic life. I think when I was working on my first comic, it took me like 10 times as long to do pages as it does now. So imagine that, you know. But I do remember like just kind of a lot of time alone to myself, like kind of working on this stuff. Which actually kind of reminds me of okay, so Kastrup has this idea that that pulling, that muse or whatever that people feel is actually, and he has like a specific definition for like how you can kind of tell if it's a muse or if it's just something you enjoy. And a lot of it's just based on whether you really enjoy it or not. and whether it makes financial sense, that kind of thing. I think I talked about this a couple days ago too, where I feel like every once in a while people have their arc or whatever. Like there's something in human storytelling. There's something in human history that is weird, where people get called to do weird things, you know? And it's not like necessarily the most rational thing. One of those things I think that's a little irrational is getting called to do or having the drive to do a couple hundred pages of comic books. I don't know why anyone in a rational mind would be like, this is a good idea. You know? I don't know. And so I do think, I don't know. It's an interesting thing of like what compels people to create creative works. And I mean, obviously there's some people who get compelled by just, by finances and stuff like that. Right. But it's just surprising to me. It's surprising to me how many people I know who do this, who may not, like, if they really had a choice, maybe they wouldn't do it. You know, it's super fun though. That's the thing. I don't know if this is one-to-one with like Kastrup's idea of like the daemon or whatever, where it's like his idea of like a muse that's like, you know, or it's nature's way of doing nature's bidding through you. You know, I don't know if that's the case. I know I've definitely had books I've worked on that felt like that. Like I think 2 Stories is definitely one of those where I do kind of feel like that's something I'm called to do rather than something I'm doing for profit or gain or fun. But then there's like, I don't know, the thing that's bizarre about it is like, are you allowed to have fun in the process? Because as I've gotten older, I'm starting to enjoy and get comfortable with the fact that like, hey, I guess I like cartooning, whether I like it or not. I don't know if that makes sense. Tangersley said rationality is overrated. Yeah. I don't know. I really do like rationality. Although it's flawed, I definitely see the flaws in my own logic and rationality when I think about things, or when I just think about like the amazing amount of things I do not know, or things I used to know that I do not remember. I get very humbled when it comes to rationality, because it's like, is this rational? Am I rational? But there are definitely times where I'll hear something like completely illogical or irrational, and that will kind of trigger something in me that I think is the part of me that appreciates the rational mind. Anyhow, whatever. I haven't been thinking too deeply about it. I've just been like kind of listening to the book and digesting the ideas. I want to read more of his work after it to kind of get into more of the hard philosophy, because I feel like this one's kind of like a it's more biographical and more like feeling driven, and it's very poetically written. Like I would recommend the book. It is a good book. it's definitely a section where Kastrup is kind of talking about nature using us as instruments or something like that. And it was the way he worded it was really cool. Where I've talked about this before, but there's a story. There's a story of this this guy who was like working on a hold on a sec. I think I've told it on here before, but I read this story about this this architect guy who was working. I don't think it was an architect. I think he was just a builder who was just doing woodwork in like one of those old ornate, Catholic churches. And he was working on these like carvings of like these angels or something on the rafters in an area where basically like no human being would ever see. Like it's on the other side of the rafters. So it's like, how there's like sides to a rafter that you would see from the floor, but nobody's like going up and looking above the rafters, right? In the way this building was being constructed. And yet he was doing these like really intricate carvings and stuff. And somebody asked him like, why would you do that if like no one's going to see it? And his answer was kind of like, I'm not building this building for people. And he was like, basically saying he was being like God's instrument or something. Now, there's been a lot of bad things that have happened in history with people who thought they were being the instrument of God. I would recommend if you have a feeling that you're an instrument of God, maybe check it with a couple things. Like, does this thing that you're being an instrument of God for in your mind hurt people? Because if it harms humans, then it's probably not a godly thing. Like, it's probably not a good thing. But I do think there's a little bit of that with art, where I think there is a point where you kind of almost need to just do service to the art for the art, like rather than like kind of, I don't know, like taking time on every page, whether people read it or not. I think just little things, spending that extra amount till you feel like it's a really refined thing. I don't know. Tankersley said, would you be able to finish a page daily if you couldn't do it digitally? If I had a whole day to myself, heck yeah. When I have worked traditionally, that's about my best rate, would be a page a day if I just had clear days to work. But the problem is, life just rarely serves that up to you. Every job I've had up until the teaching position, I didn't even really have like a quantifiably long periods of time off of work. So like the most I would get is like a week off of work or something. And one thing I'm really excited about with teaching is getting summers off, because the ability to get comic pages done over the summer, or projects done or things like that is a very valuable to me. Like that's a huge gift that a lot of people do not have in careers. And one of the added benefits to teaching, which is kind of cool. As I've learned, though, it's very necessary to keep your sanity while teaching too, because you do need a little time off. It is it's a hard job. I don't want to complain and act like it's a different job than other people's jobs. A lot of people have hard jobs, and I really enjoy the job, but it is very exhausting. And having, summers off really does help with that quite a bit. Also, it helps you prep for the next year, because that's all stuff that you don't think would add up, but it definitely does, where you're able to kind of collect and get materials together and, you know, get your lesson plans written, all that kind of stuff. But I'm excited about using a lot of that time to work on comics. However, between the time of this deadline, I need to use every free day I have, because I've got about little over a month to finish this up. I know that for this stream, I'm probably going to shade the page and then possibly take a break, have a snack, and then I might stream again and do the colors as well. But yeah, I think I could handily get probably a page done every day if I had just clear days. Again, how often do you have clear days? But yeah, at this point, we're at page 174. So at least since Friday, I've managed to do pretty much a page a day. And then we'll see if I can kind of retain that output. But also, you know, you got to realize, like, that's because Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I literally just had the house to myself, no distractions, and was able to like buckle down and focus and get it done. It gets harder like the more kind of things you have kind of in your way to get these things done. It definitely makes a difference, I think, if you know, if somebody's able to make, you know, like a living wage off their comics. I don't think a page a day would be super impossible. But again, I don't think a lot of people making the kind of comics I'm making are really doing it with like wild, you know, dollar signs in their eyes. I think they're kind of taking a long shot gamble for the expression and the art of it, and kind of following a passion. All right. We're getting there, though. I'm excited about getting a little further on these pages. I just realized that is not the best placement for the stream. Let me widen this out, so you guys can see more. There we go. Okay, so we're just doing shading, lots of shading. Kind of imagining there's a light source coming from the right a little bit, or the left a little bit, and then a little bit on the right as well. I just realized I forgot to add the floor. Arg, this is when I start getting cocky and being like, I do a page a day. I forgot to do the floor tiles. And they're at a certain angle, so let me see where they were at on the previous page. Straight, Okay. Okay, it's almost like a straight grid at this angle, so I just have to draw them. Tankersley said, "Arg." I actually work pretty fast traditionally. Inking traditionally to me is pretty fast. The only thing that I will say sped this up a little bit was kind of deciding to do it without rulers, which was a decision I had to make really early on. Every work I've made before this had like really straight geometric lines. And I decided that I wanted this to look a little more freehand than that. And so in doing so, it enabled me to kind of bust out backgrounds fairly quickly. But it's also become complicated in areas where sometimes having a ruler would have actually been easier. So I don't know. I don't know if that's actually saved me time. This is something I find quite often happens in art, where I'll come up with a style where I'm like, oh, I can work this much quicker. And then it turns out it takes equally, if not more time to do said style. So I don't know. We'll see. But I can ink pretty fast traditionally. Almost everything I did professionally in my career up until I was an art director was all traditionally inked. Because just traditional inking is so much faster for me. But I am getting a little faster at this style. This style was taking me a long time to kind of get in the flow of, though. That's the catch of like using different styles is you know, I'm comfortable working in other styles, but you get quicker at styles you use all the time. And in this case, this was not a style that I used quite frequently. All right, here we go. I could possibly share the 2 tracks that I have mastered for the next album if you want to hear it. I also could probably play the raw track, the unmastered 3rd track, for the next solo album thing for you guys. So that's another thing that I could possibly do during this stream. I'm trying to do here is just kind of get this checkered pattern of the floor. Eventually, we're going to erase all the lines that are in the background. Now, technically, she's at kind of an interesting angle here, so it's not necessarily a checkered pattern. It's more triangular from the right angles. But it really depends on what kind of comic pages you're trying to make. I mean, you know, I think if you're doing like really hardcore perspective work, it could take a long time. So you have to kind of measure out all your stuff. Tankersley said, I have a checkered past. What were you into? Two-tone records and ska and stuff? There was a famous two-tone double CD collection when I was in high school. This was back when music was on CDs. But it was a double disc collection called Two-Tone A Checkered Past. And it was a Two-Tone Records ska compilation. Kind of like all the best music by Two-Tone. And was a really good little ska thing. All right, what do we got here? Did I do it? Okay, I did it. Okay, here we go. So we're going to merge down. Merge down. Now it has that background that I needed. But on pages like this, where it's mostly like larger faces and stuff like that, they go a lot quicker than pages that are a lot more complicated. Tankersley said, music is still on CDs. I have several of them. Oh, okay. I guess they still sell CDs. That makes sense. I feel like this day and age, the places to the way to do it would be vinyl or MP3s. I guess not even MP3s, really, just Spotify. It's interesting though. I used to have a very curated, like when let's see here, when iPods came out, right? I had a very curated like playlist and collection of music, you know. And a lot of that was like pulled from CDs I had bought and stuff like that. And for years, that would be like kind of the way to do it. You just, you know, that would be like the worst thing you could lose if you lost data on your computer was like your songs, all your music, that kind of thing. But I do feel like for convenience's sake, I have really moved. I'll admit to moving more recently to kind of Spotify. Being able to kind of listen to almost any album without having to lug it around with you. I know that's probably horrible to say, but I used to be a real audiophile. Like I'd care a lot about the speakers I was listening through, and I don't know. Now I don't even really have like a decent stereo system. But I have a bunch of CDs. I don't even know where they are anymore. Like I have my old book of them. Which is kind of sad. It's kind of like I feel like there was almost there was something tangible you were buying, even though it was just a storage for data that you were purchasing, you know, on a CD. It's like there was a tangible product, you know, and there is something sad about like digital products. Not that there's anything wrong with them. I just, and you know, here I am working digitally, so you know, nothing against it. It's just there's something strange about it. Like I do feel like there's almost a sacredness to the thing that has a tangible reality to it. And I think I think I've talked about this too, where it's like you kind of treasured those things a lot more than when you have access to everything. It kind of makes you appreciate or treasure or curate less efficiently. Like back when most movies were on DVD and people weren't doing like Netflix and Disney and stuff like that, it was like to pick a film you were going to watch was kind of like could be tough depending on how many DVDs you had, but it was always kind of like a cool process of like, you know, kind of digging through the curated list. Like it wasn't like you had access to like any stupid movie on the planet. All right, here we go. But there is something to be said for like, I really enjoy YouTube. I enjoy digital content. You know, I feel like that having that tangible thing has a value of some kind. But it really is convenient if you're like, just walking around wanting to listen to like a playlist. Like you can just make a playlist on Spotify and you don't have to like, carry it around with you or whatever, or burn it for people. You literally just have consistent access to it. All right, there we go. We're almost done with the first panel, which is good because I'm guessing we're going to be almost an hour in. This is what I've realized. A panel usually takes me about an hour to tone. More than an hour to draw, but an hour to tone a panel seems to be about the right pace. Except in cases like, I'm guessing the second panel here will be fairly quick to tone. I definitely should probably work out when I'm done with maybe shading this page. So that's what I think I'll do. So I'm going to shade the whole page, and then I'll take a break, work out, and then get back to streaming up into the wee hours of the morning. So it's going to definitely be a night gang kind of stream like the old days. Maybe I'll even have something to eat after that. It's been weird weather. That helps here too. I don't know what the weather's like for you, Tankersley, but like for us, it's been like super rainy and like kind of moody. And there was a long period of time when I lived in Portland where I got so sick of like Portland weather. Like it was not refreshing to be in rain. It was just like, ugh, don't want to be in rain. But it's been pretty nice recently, having just like some rainfall. Gets all cold and dark, and like there's something about cold and dark that makes you want to work on art. Or at least makes me want to work on art. And I've thought about this for years. Like, why is it that cold and dark makes you want to work on art? Well, the temptation to go outside is less extreme. Like, it's less tempting to be like, I want to be outside. Just because it's like freezing outside. So I'm happy to be holed up in my home. And then it just kind of touches on, I think like that childhood thing that maybe we were trained with, where it's like as a kid you have like recess, right? But then there's days where it would rain or snow and nobody could go outside to play. So you're either stuck inside a classroom playing like Connect 4 for the 50th time, or you allow that like boredom to drive you to create something really entertaining, right? And before you know it, you get lost in it, and then like your time is up. I don't know if that makes sense, but I do feel like a lot of us who drew kind of found drawing more entertaining than a lot of the kind of distractions that other kids would like find themselves drawn to on rainy days. And there's this weird drive, and I know it's kind of silly. Rationally, it doesn't necessarily make sense, right? I've thought about this too. Like, I think making art is a desire to make something a little more permanent, or to make a mark that counts, or to make something really that could outlive you, But then at the end of the day, that rationale kind of falls apart a little bit. Under regular philosophy, under materialist philosophy, which is why I think Bernardo Kastrup's so interesting, because that justification for art really collapses if we're just in kind of a material system. Because in a material system, like, with entropy, right, your book is gonna go out of print. You know what I mean? Like imagine all the, okay, let's just for fun pretend there's like a guy, because I think it was the Roman library, right? Or was it the library in Greece? Maybe it was the library in Athens. I can't remember. I think it was in Athens, the big library fire. I think it was the Library of Athens. But anyhow, it's like the biggest library in the world at the time. It was filled with all of this knowledge of human beings. And a lot of people question, like, how deep the knowledge was, like, at that time. Like, how much knowledge do we lose in just that one, library just disappearing, right? And imagine you're a cartoonist and you made the best graphic novel known to man. It's like a life-changing, amazing graphic novel, and it's in that library. And then that's it. Like, and you had passed on and you thought, I am leaving this for generations after me to to contribute to this art form that I love so much. Or you're making a beautiful painting, right? And you're like, these paintings shall outlast everything. This painting shall be eternal. It shall live forever. And then you're doing your painting in Pompeii. It's like, I don't know. From a naturalistic point of view, it really erodes the argument of that being a good, valid reason for making beautiful things or making art. And I don't think having fun is a sustainable, it's a weird thing about me as a person, but I just don't think having fun or joy or happiness can be the reason. It can be a reason, but I don't think that can be your driving reason to make art. I think that if that is, then you'd be happy to just do like paint and sips, and I think most artists would probably, never embark on something like a graphic novel or like a painting that requires stages to kind of work on. There's got to be something more to it. And I do like Kastrup's idea of kind of breaking away from materialism, philosophically, like to kind of push the boundaries of material to kind of see, is there mind behind material? I think that's a worthwhile, discussion, and that's existed for a long time, like that premise, but that would definitely give a lot more permanence to actions done in the world, or to like even art pieces or to our own existence in general. If we're all kind of part of some big story, I think that definitely adds meaning, and significance. And then that would mean that what we're working on, even if it erodes in the, the brutal pace of time and entropy, it's like it would still last. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay. Shading. I just said shading. Okay. I'm going to... Kevin Cross said, what's up, homie? How's it going, Kevin? How you doing, my dude? I've been talking about Bernardo Kastrup and and his philosophy and comics and why we do these crazy things. How are you doing, man? I hope you're doing well. I'm going to play a trailer real quick, and then we'll get on to the next panel here. Let's do this. Here's Paul Pate's wonderful ad.
There he is. My boy got the board all set up and ready to go.
You're late.
Yo, chill, my dude. I brought you something.
Brought me something? You feeling all right?
You like graphic novels?
Do I like graphic novels? Harrison, I'm the star of 3 graphic novels. You know, the Detective Perez series by author and illustrator Paul Pate. They're on sale at Amazon. You're in them too. They're set right here in Rust City.
Yeah, I'm hip to all those, but yo, you gotta check out this really dope one by Joshua Kemble.
Let me see.
Yo, this here is called Jacob's Apartment. It's about this young dude who shares an apartment with this girl he's trying to get with, but their romance is doomed from the start. Yo, I swear this could be about you, man.
Wow. The art in this is really nice.
That's nothing compared to this next one. It's a masterpiece.
What's
This is called Two Stories. It's a semi-autobiographical account of Kimball's childhood and early adulthood. He got picked on a lot as a kid, just like you.
artwork in this is really beautiful. All black and white. Looks great.
The story is about how he struggled to adjust and sort of grow up in spite of being a dork, just like you. No offense.
You got these for me?
Yeah, graphic Joshua Kemble. Bought them right off of Amazon. Great stories, great art, just for you, my dude.
Well, thanks. You to do something nice. I appreciate reading them. But sit down, yo mo.
All right, welcome back. We're working on toning page 174 of Not Death But Love, the Strange Supernatural Story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Kevin said, good man, miss ya. I miss you too, buddy. Yeah, this book is a beast. I will say I'm really eager to get on to other books as much as I'm enjoying the process of this one. Especially now that we're in crunch time and it's like, okay, these pages absolutely have to get knocked out. But it's like also trying to kind of retain the quality and stuff like that. But it is funny. I forget who we were talking to on Artcasters about this recently, but I do think that's a huge part of creativity is like when you feed it, and this is the part where I think Kastrup might be onto something with like his ideas of like the daemon. But it's like, it is kind of true that if you feed the muse or whatever, by just kind of showing up, I do kind of think that's how ideas come about. Kind of like with comedy where it's like if you kind of feed an idea, if you riff it and you kind of think about it with friends or something, and you kind of work it a little bit and roll with it, funny things just kind of arise. I think it's a similar thing with creativity here. I definitely want to make sure I'm hitting the light source here. This is a weird angle to light, but it shouldn't be that hard. I just got it wrong a little bit for a second there. Anyhow, so that has definitely been happening to me a lot lately, where I have a lot of things I'm eager to work on or draw outside of this. The plus side is like, with what I do for my job, like I get to draw like weird stuff all the time, as like demos and stuff. So I think one of the kids in one of my classes was asking me to do like a psychotic Donald Duck. So I did like a really quick painting of just like an old, like crazy, demented Donald Duck. I think I even gave him teeth, because like if you want to make a Disney character look really creepy, just give them like big, toothy smiles. Especially characters like Donald, you know, doesn't really have teeth, but a duck with teeth is kind of a creepy thing. So anyhow, because of that, I get to play a little bit. So I'm not constantly wanting to play when it comes to the art that I'm making. Like I'm able to kind of stay focused and stay on track. But I think some of it is from having that outlet. But even though I have like decent focus on this at this point in the book, where it's like 174 pages in, I'm kind of like, I'm really eager to be done, because I've been drawing these same characters over and over and over again, and it's fun. It is fun. And it's easier as you go, because you kind of get to know the characters and the style you're working in and stuff. But it's like, man, I could use another comic. But what's funny is the comic I'm aching to do is like, I think prior to this was probably like my longest work. So I don't know, man. It's a never-ending loop of just being driven to do these things just to make cool things, and just kind of giving up the fight against it. I think when you fight it, this is my own opinion, and it actually ties into the cast rope stuff. I think if you fight the what is it? Let me think of a good example here. Okay, I had a point in my life where I felt like I had to give up playing music. Like I just thought, well, it's now or never. I got to focus on. I got to put everything I like aside and just focus on building an art career. And that's my chosen path. Everything else has to go. I think in retrospect, that might have been a mistake, because like I would still pick up a guitar here or there, play music. But I feel like there was a good period of time where I like almost forgot myself. And the things that I want to create and stuff. And I think like kind of being true to like making the things you like to make, has something to do with like the creative thing. Cause that does get you into like, you're feeding the muse, and inevitably like a project that you have to stick with for a long period of time will kind of rise to the surface. And still, obviously you can't do everything at once, right? Like right now, while I'm working on my comic, I can't make music, but today I did spend a good 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes making music. And that makes me happier working on comics, because I'm like, oh, I already got the music out of my system. Like I didn't get it fully out. Like I could spend a whole day writing songs and stuff, but like it teased it enough for me to be like, okay, I'm ready to do art stuff now. And I think, I hate to say it was a mistake, because it did help me build a career in art, but I do kind of feel like, again, I'm thinking about this a lot because Kastrup's book that Damon and the Soul of the West talks about the two kind of phases of life, how like your first half of life is about kind of establishing yourself and like building a career and getting securing resources so that you can do the thing that nature wants you to do, whatever that is. And he also acknowledges like not everybody's going to get past that first stage, right? But it's like once you've kind of had that basic thing met, then nature throws you a curveball and shows you the real purpose, you know, which is like making things that are the whims of nature. I don't know. I'm trying to paraphrase and kind of think of his philosophy in terms of art and stuff. I don't wholesale agree with it. There were just some things that resonated as true or close to the truth in some of his thinking, and definitely resonated with me as a creative. Okay, we're gonna kind of get this a little more shaded. Her hair's always a little weird to shade. Not too weird. It's just kind of like these giant. I always think of it as like I'm drawing like giant noodles. Like if you look at Browning's hair, it does kind of look like clumps of noodles. Like it's not a her hair was not, you know, I don't know, the style of her hair is very interesting and weird. But anyhow, so that's the way I figured out how to cartoon her hair, was just starting to think of it as like these giant noodles or entrails on her head. Anyhow, that helped just to figure out. Kevin said, I hear you there. I secretly making a hardcore punk crossover thrash record very slowly with everything else. Your stuff plus doing all the audio for my cartoon kicked me in the pants to do what I meant to do, getting back to my roots. Nice. Yeah, and I feel like, I don't know, it's weird, but it's like, I don't think it's about happiness either. I don't think it's about happiness. And that's something that Kastrup talks about too, where it's like, I don't think it's about happiness. Like I definitely, I think it's about something deeper, because it's like, I think the pursuit of just like pure happiness is like an aimless pursuit. Like you're not going to end up there. I know so many people who tried to just kind of stay perma happy, and I don't think they get there. So there's got to be something deeper than that. That's kind of to the significance of these things we're doing, you know? And I think some of it's about expressing something that is innate to us or something. Like, and like, we don't necessarily even have to know why. That's the thing that I think I'm finally getting more comfortable with, is like, I don't know if I need to know why I make comics, or music. Like, I don't really have a point to making music. There's not really career stuff that's going to happen with it, but it's like, it's fun. That is fun, but it's not always fun. You know, Kevin, you'll know that. It's like, there's parts of the music process that are labor, you know? Although that is really fun. That is actually really joyful and does bring me a lot of happiness and joy. But there's also an element of it that's kind of like, I'm trying to think of it. This might be my kind of more autistic kind of take on things, but it's like, I really enjoyed Tetris a lot as a kid. Tetris was such a good game. I would spend it like hours just playing Tetris. Like, I really enjoyed it. And there is something about music that's kind of like playing Tetris. There's like a completionist thing with it, where you're kind of piecing together these disparate ideas, and then just kind of trusting the process. I guess comics are like that too, right? Where it's like you're just kind of trusting this weird process and these made up rules to kind of work, and trusting the idea that like if you stick with it, it'll come out, and like I don't know, there's a lot of Tetris in making art, in my mind. I don't know if that makes sense. A lot of like assembly, Lego building, but there's also something like, I don't know, mystical about it that's fun, because you'll come up with ideas sometimes where you won't even know where they came from, like especially like lyrics and stuff, where you're like, I don't even know what this is about, but it's kind of what it has to be. That kind of thing where you're letting, I don't know, I guess that is kind of like letting nature use you as an instrument. Like you're an instrument. I don't know. Like magnets, man. Where do they come from? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm kidding. Jim Luhan said hello. Kevin was saying fulfillment, maybe. Yeah, I think fulfillment's closer than happiness for it for some reason. What's up, Mr. Luhan? For those of you who haven't, Jim, we're off Artcasters on Thursdays, but on this Thursday because of Thanksgiving. But would you want to come on maybe the week after Thanksgiving? We could do a Unicornians send-off, because you just completed Unicornians. Epically, I might add. If you guys haven't seen it, I would recommend watch the last 2 episodes of the Unicornians. The ending of that was magical, Jim. There's a Kevin Cross is in it as a voice, as a very key character. It's very rad. But there's also my favorite part of like the entire Unicornians series. Like I don't want to give away spoilers. I'll just say there's an executioner in it, and I think it might be my favorite character in the whole Unicornians thing. That executioner, Jim, is amazing. Yeah, Kevin was saying, I love this stuff. Let the magic take control. Ask Ronnie James Dio. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. I think you gotta, we gotta understand we're in service to something. I don't know. We're in service to something. It's not always gonna make sense. It doesn't always have to make sense. This is me talking to myself, because I'm a person who like, I need things to make rational, logical sense. For me, that's usually how my mind works. But it's interesting to kind of explore the idea that it doesn't always have to make sense. Sometimes we just make stuff, and that's okay. That's kind of a good thing. That's kind of art. It verges on the irrational. It's based on. It's like music. It's based on rational principles, right? There's like triads and different kind of rules, but at the end of the day, like it just kind of you just kind of serve the thing, and then it serves you ideas and stuff, and you just kind of do it. I don't know. I'm rambling. I'm not thinking very deeply right now. But I am shading here. We're getting pretty far on this here shading. I had a feeling this part wouldn't take as long to shade, which is good. This will be probably the quickest panel. Anytime it's just like a close-up shot, of someone, it's like those are the quickest, easiest panels to get done. Do. Now I say this and like watch this bowl that she's holding of broth is going to be the hardest panel on earth to shade for no reason. I have that happen a lot when I'm working on art. I don't know if you guys have that too, where like the second I think to myself, like this will go quick, this is easy, it's like something comes up and it becomes the hardest thing in the planet. I do think this will go quick though. Okay. Kevin was saying, you're making sense to me. Nice. Yeah, anyhow, I've been enjoying Bernardo Kastrup. He's a pretty interesting like philosopher. And it's like it's digestible, at least that book. I haven't gotten into his heavy stuff yet, so but I'm intrigued enough to where I already bought the second audiobook. So I'm going to start getting into what is it called? It's called analytical idealism is the philosophy. Analytic idealism. It's interesting. But anyhow, he had a book on analytic idealism before this one. I just thought I'd read his most recent work because he was so interesting to watch an interview with on YouTube. I would recommend that. Maybe just watch the guy talking. It was funny though, because I was casually mentioning the conversation I saw him having with Alex O'Connor on YouTube, and then and how interesting it was. And then I think Paul Pate messaged me and was like, "Are you talking about Bernardo Kastrup?" And I was like, "How did you know?" And he's like, "Oh, I have a friend who's like obsessed with him." So, yeah, I don't know, he's an interesting thinker. I definitely don't think I subscribe to like the overall arching idea of it, but I don't know. That's one of the things I like as I get older, is kind of like not knowing is fun. You know, being open to the idea that I'm not as smart as I thought I was. Jim, what's next? What's next, Jim? Do you feel the morning of finishing a big project? Or do you feel the excitement of like the 25 other projects you're going to start? I was just looking up today. These are like things that mystify me. I was joking about the what was it? The Insane Clown Posse's like it's so awful. It was a viral joke online for a while because it was just like the dumbest lyric ever, but it was a guy talking about like magnets, how do they work? And it's like they were talking about it like it's some big mystery that no one's understood. And it's like, no, we kind of understand how magnets work and magnetism. But that being said, on the magnet front, I had to remind myself, like I was playing, I have a Stratocaster that I'm madly in love with. I have two guitars in my life that are my dream guitars, and this is one of them. And I mean like dream guitars, like guitars that I imagined having as a child that I finally acquired. These are like the two, you know, like a Telecaster and a Strat. Like those were my jams. Oh, Jim said messing with Procreate Dreams. Oh, nice. Kevin said, by the way, I just drop tuned my guitar to Rad Rad. in honor of the Unicornian wrap up. I was proud of myself for finding the R chord too. It might be the first to have found it. Nice. I love it. Oh, I was heading somewhere and I got distracted for a second. Yeah, anyhow, like, I don't know. I think Castrup's really interesting. Oh, guitars. Okay, magnets. That's right. We were talking about magnets. So, I couldn't remember for the life of me, like, how, like, pickups work. like, I own a lot of guitars, and I love them, but, like, pickups are so weird. And then I had to remind myself, like, I don't know if this just happens, but I had to remind myself, like, wait a minute. I don't even remember. What was it that, like, makes a telephone work again? Like, so I just went on, that's another YouTube rabbit hole that I was on, was, like, just watching, like, basic, like, elementary school science videos of, like, how the telephone works. And I was like, how did I forget that? Like, I can't believe I forgot, you know, that it's like air compression kind of pushing this thing that then pushes and creates an electrical signal for every push, so that the electrical signal, the signal is matching the push. This is the telephone. And then it would basically project, and then that same electrical signal would cause a push on the other end of a speaker, right? Kind of translating those waves. But then I was trying to remember, like, how pickups work. And then I watched it and I was like, it's still like, I get it. I get the science of it, but it's still kind of amazing. Like, it's kind of amazing that, like, you can take, like, a magnet, right, and wind it with, like, copper wire, right, and then put, like, posts in the middle of it, and then put metal strings above it, creating a magnetic field, right, between the pickup and the string. It creates, like, a magnetic field. Like, there's a magnetic field because the magnet is creating that with the metal, and the different metals, different winds of copper all affect, like, that field. And like, the more winds, the stronger that field will be, and, like, the less winds, like, the weaker it is. But the more kind of the more, like, deep and rich it'll be. So anyhow, just weird that works. And kind of cool that can, like, create, like, these signals, right, that are then fed through an electrical wire to a speaker, and then push the speaker according to the sound waves that are generated in the magnetic field. That's crazy to me. I do think that's cool. So, like, I kind of, in theory, I could probably, if I bought the right equipment, make a pickup, you know, after watching some of these videos. Like, it's possible. Like, I'd probably want to get a winder and stuff like that, but I could build my own pickup. And yet the weird thing is, even when I'm building it, like, the theoretical is still like the rational understanding is there, but it's still just bizarre that works. Like, that's crazy to me. That works to generate this, like, amazing sound and stuff. What are you gonna mess with Procreate Dreams? What would be funny is if Jim was just talking about dreams of procreating. He's like, I'm kind of done with animation. I'm just gonna start going to sleep and dreaming about sex. That's all you're gonna do. You're like, all I'm doing now is I'm just gonna have dreams of procreating. That's it. I'm done with this art stuff. Oh, goodness. careful with those dreams, Jim. They can get wild. That's all I'm saying. All right, what do we got here? It is kind of weird that they called that program Procreate. Like, like was it originally? Was there like a first program called Create, and it was like maybe it was made for? I'm guessing this is how it happened. It was probably called Create, and that was made for like newbies, right? Like non-professionals. It's just like, hey, this is a fun toy, right? And then somebody, without realizing the implications, was like, we need to make a professional version of Create. We need to make a professional version. And somebody else is like, yeah, just call it Procreate. And they're like, yep, nothing wrong with that. No bad jokes with that. That won't be taken wrong at all. Let's call our entire program Procreate. Kevin was saying dreams of knocking boots. It does mystify me that they called it Procreate. And just, I don't know. It's funny. It literally is like calling your Okay, guys, here's the plan. Kevin, Jim, the plan is let's make a competitor to Procreate that's just called Sex. And it's an art program, but it's just called Sex. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, if they're going there, we might as well just make a better program that's just calling it like it is. That's all I'm saying. No more of this beating around the bush. Like, let's call it what it is. I wonder how many times the founders of that company have like regretted that decision. Probably not. I mean, they're probably like crying their way to the bank, you know? Like, I don't think it's going to upset them. From what I understand, it's a pretty amazing program. Kevin was saying they called it that because Pornhub was taken. Oh, man. Too funny. Too funny. There are times where I wish I did like sketch comedy because that would be funny, is just doing a bit about the writer's room or the sales department doing pitch meetings of like the different names they could name Procreate. And all of them are like the most lewd things ever. It's just like they have acronyms that just spell out. Or maybe it's just a guy who works at that office who's just always like really inappropriate, and he dresses like Hugh Hefner. Like, he's like a graphic designer who dresses like Hugh Hefner, and every sales meeting he's saying something like inappropriate. And then finally, you know, it's the final pitch meeting for this new app that they're going to develop. And he's like, we'll call it Procreate. And they're like, that's great. We're going with it. And he's like, no, that was one of my jokes. I don't know. There's got to be something there. Noodle hair. All right. We're getting there, guys. We're getting there. I gotta say, it's nice to have a time off. That's pretty awesome. But I do think maybe this is the insanity of creators, right? Like, most people, even art teachers that I know, like, they don't go home and then go, you know what? I have a vacation. I'm going to work on art. Like, most people are like, I'm going to go to Switzerland. Like, they're going to go on a wild adventure, or they're going to watch a movie, or like they're going to go to Disneyland, or go visit family, that kind of stuff. There is something weird about, like, I don't know. This is a really good vacation for me. And I totally miss my kid. I miss my wife and stuff. And I wish I had been able to visit family and stuff. And that I didn't have a looming deadline. Because literally, if I didn't have this deadline, I wouldn't have stayed home and just worked on comics. But there's also a part of me, and my wife was making fun of me for it, like in a good way. Like, she was, you know, teasing in a loving way. The other day, we were both off work, and I was in this room. This was on Friday, I think. And I was in this room just plugging away on my comic and listening to Bernardo Kastrup's analytic idealism ideas, and was just like totally enjoying it, like loving it. I'm like, I am listening to philosophy and working on a comic. This is the best. And meanwhile, she's in the other room with her sister watching true crime. And they were kind of like in the zone, you know, just enjoying their time off. Like, I'm finally off work. And yeah, we just thought it was so funny, that juxtaposition, that like they're kind of like eating ice cream and watching a movie. And meanwhile, I'm in here just like drinking coffee and listening to philosophy. and working on a comic, you know? Like, cool, I got off work teaching people how to draw. Now I get to draw for 16 hours. I don't know. I think it's okay that that's not normal. I actually think it's kind of good to just kind of go with it and be like, you know what? I am a weirdo, and that is awesome. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's where I'm getting to, is like, I'm starting to embrace the lack of rationality. It may not even be rational, the doing this thing. I mean, it is cool. It's going to be a beautiful book, right? It's going to be a beautiful book, but why does that matter? I don't know. I don't know if I need to know. I just like, I have a need for art. I think we should all start wearing aviators when we're working on our art and just acting like Tom Cruise in Top Gun, like the first Top Gun. You know? And we'll have like an art instructor come into the room and be like, "What are you doing, man? You can't draw like that." And it's like, I have a need to draw, man. I'm going to draw the way I draw. And you put on you're just like kind of constantly the aviators. I don't know. Aviators need to happen. This is the downside of now being old and wearing glasses. If I get sunglasses now, I'm going to have to get prescription sunglasses. Because I literally, like, my eyesight is awful without them. But maybe I'll get a pair of prescription aviators so that I can, you know, and I'll just wear a leather jacket while I'm with the collar turned up. And then I definitely would have to get a switchblade comb, just so that like every once in a while I'd stop and I'd be like, "Guys, what's going on here in my art?" That's a fair point. Kevin was saying, I wear aviators when I procreate. Yeah, Kevin was saying, I hear that too. I just had 4 days off and I was stoked to be able to have full days to make stuff at my desk. I just misspoke and I thought of a dumb joke. Stoked is a term that I use, that Kevin uses. It's very much a generational term. I don't think kids use the stoked as much as we do nowadays. But here's the thing. I never thought about this until now when I almost accidentally said spoked. Was like, did people who were like hardcore BMX bikers, did they put that twist on it? Like skaters would be like, or surfers, right? Surfers or skaters would be like, man, I'm totally stoked about that. And then, the BMX biker would come in the room and be like, yeah, I'm spoked too, man. I'm totally spoked. I'm here with the dad jokes, guys. I'm totally spoked to share these jokes with you. Jim, if you're still there, when you do learn Procreate, you got to do some videos about learning Procreate, and in the background, just play like Al Green, Just be like, hey, this is teaching you all how to procreate. You know what I'm saying? Guys, we're going to work on that perspective tool, Yeah, that's right. Orthogonal lines. Yeah. Okay. That was interesting. We're making history here, guys. Making comic pages. Kevin, how's the animation coming? The soundtrack stuff you sent me is like incredible, dude. I'm not sure how much you want us sharing about it, but everything I've heard so far, I'm very, very excited about. Plus, you really have a gift for like old-timey, like Western music. It just sounds super good, which I'm not surprised by. I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't. I don't know. I think a lot of people don't realize that, like, if you play music and you have an ear for it, there's a whole bunch of genres you can kind of end up doing. The one thing I can't do is like shred. Like I don't do face melting solos. Nor do I tend to like face melting solos. Although as I've gotten older, I can appreciate the occasional face melter, But yeah, that's the one kind of guitar that I don't think there's ever going to be a point where I get that down. Another thing I'm never going to really learn, I don't think, because I don't think that I'm trying to think if there's any band that I dig that uses tapping. Well, I don't know. I'm sure there's an exception to the rule, but like for me, I'm not like big on tapping. Where you're just like, I don't know. But I do think Kevin said slow clapping for the dad jokes. I appreciate that. I'm just envisioning that maybe you're working on your art and you have your aviators on, and and you're looking cool doing art, and then the dad joke drops and you're just like, Just instantly, like everything had to go for that slow clap. That's what I visualized, Kevin. He said, my first time making spaghetti Western stuff, but my process is the same as writing punk and metal for me. Yeah, I feel like there's a shared language. The language of the daemon. All right. We're getting there, guys. We're getting there. So here's the plan, fellas and ladies. I'm just assuming there's mad ladies listening. That's, which doesn't match with my YouTube demographic at all. But anyhow, I still feel like, just in case, you know, I should probably mention ladies too. But anyhow, so what I'm planning on here is I'm going to finish these shadows on this whole page. We're going to finish the shading. And then once I'm done with the shading, I'm going to go work out, eat, and then I will probably live stream while I am doing color, which might be at like I think by the time I finish this, it might be about midnight. And so I think that might be like an early morning, definitely like a night gang kind of stream. So that is the plan. But I am using, this is a psychological trick I do where I don't really want to work out. I like the effects of working out. I've never grown to like Arnold level. Like if you don't know what I'm talking about, just just watch Pumping Iron. There's like these funny quotes where Arnold is like, "It's amazing the feeling of the pump." He's like talking about it. And Arnold got something out of working out that I have never experienced. Like, it can be kind of fun. You're like challenging and testing your limits and stuff. But for me, it's still kind of a drag to do. Like, I've gotten better at it. I've gotten better form with it and stuff like that. I'm not powerlifting by any means, but I do envy. Maybe I shouldn't, right? Maybe for Arnold, like lifting was like equivalent to like our insane pursuit of comics, you know, where it's like he was just called to like lift. But anyhow, my point is, I've never really found it to be enjoyable. I like the results. Like the results are enjoyable. The not hurting is enjoyable. And so because of that, I've learned to enjoy the after process. Like I like when I'm done working out, but the process itself is still kind of a drag. It's like, ugh, I got to do this. So I come up with these ways to like psych myself out where I can feel that way about comics a lot too, where it's like, I like the results, but ugh, like, you know, so I'll kind of psych myself out for that kind of thing by being like, okay, I'm going to get to work out after this. Like I'm convincing myself that this is a gift to me that I get after I'm done with this. And then I'm also going to basically pair that with food because I'm a little hungry. And it's like, okay, that will be pleasant to eat some food. Working out is going to be a drag, especially at the time of night that I'm done with this. But if I can convince myself that it's a reward for finishing this step of the comic, anyhow, it's like these weird little psychological mind games. Oh, nice. Kevin said I did some tapping at least a couple times on the metal part. Okay, well, I mean, but see, I think, Kevin, I think that you can face melt on the guitar if required. You know, you can melt faces. For me, I can give faces a mild clammy sweat. That's as far as I can get. Like, for me, it's like, if we're talking about face melting, right? We're watching Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom. Everybody's seen the Ark. If you pause the video at about the point where their faces become a little putty-like and like kind of waxy before they start melting, that's about as far as I can get on guitar, especially on leads. But I feel like Kevin, you can probably get all the way through that scene, you know, and melt some faces. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. I have a feeling. Tankersley said, how would you tackle this shading with traditional ink? I wouldn't do this with traditional ink. If I wanted to do something similar with traditional ink, I would use hatching, or if I wanted like a similar kind of old-timey vibe, I could use like India ink and then use washes of black and white to kind of do this. Another way of possibly doing it would be to kind of like ink it and then go over to shade with a black Prismacolor. Yeah, there's a couple ways you could kind of approximate this kind of style traditionally. The ideal, if I had time, man, it would be fun to do a comic in that style where you do ink washes with white Prismacolor, just to kind of smooth out some of the transitions of tone. But yeah, anything's possible, you know, like everything you're using in Photoshop is an approximation of something. So that's something I think a lot of people forget. Even like, oh man, I was listening to one of those like song breakdowns on YouTube, and somebody was kind of breaking down like Trent Reznor's early effects on the earliest like Nine Inch Nails albums, which I absolutely love. Like it, I don't care who you are, Pretty Hate Machine's a freaking great album. Like, it's a good album, but it was such a unique sound for the time. But like, when you find out how you process those sounds using like really basic synthesizers and then kind of running them through different distortions, and like just doing like little subtle shifts to get these like iconic tones that now are like a preset on like almost any digital recording platform. But at the time, it's like, you know, you had to like actually like, you know, program these things. All things that are digital are like a facsimile of something that was once like physical. And I think Kevin and I used to talk about this a lot back when we were doing BIPT, but like, I think the first step to getting decent at digital art is really understanding traditional art. Because like, if you don't know what you're approximating with what you're working on, it's kind of hard to make it look coherent. And so a lot of what happens with people trying to make digital art that just looks digital is it looks really blurry and kind of weird. There's like a specific kind of look to like bad digital art, where it looks too shiny, or it looks like really bad airbrush art from the 80s, which sometimes can be really cool. But yeah, I mean, anything you're doing on Photoshop other than the undo button, you know, I personally think there's probably a manual way of doing it. With this, I always imagined that this would be pencil, with possibly like contrast just turned up a bunch. Like maybe it would be on Coquille board, like doing, you know, rendering on Coquille board. So kind of an old school look. So yeah, I don't know. That's the kind of ways that I think about it, but that helps me approach it. Yeah, I do think before getting decent at digital art, I think people should. I do think it's really valuable for people to learn traditional art, especially nowadays. Like, in the realm of like, where a bunch of salespeople who have no taste are gonna like push people towards making stuff with AI. I think that learning the kind of the roots behind whatever you're doing is like really important for the craft of it, Yeah. Kevin was saying, yeah, I can face melt if needed, but I'm more into pummeling with sick riffs. Yeah, I think you have a good balance with it, but I'm just saying, like, I've never felt the need or the ability. I never really had music classes, so that's another thing. Because I do think some of the face melty-ish stuff, it's like you kind of, some of that has to be like passed down, or at least back in the day when you and I were learning guitar. I think nowadays you could probably look it up on YouTube and learn pretty much anything you wanted about guitar. But when I was first learning, like I didn't have guitar lessons or anything like that. I just learned from like a chord book, and then we started a band. And a lot of those kind of things are things that are like passed from like musician to musician, at least back in the day, were like little tricks that would be taught, where it's like, oh, here's how you do that. I remember the first time I learned a hammer on was somebody we were playing with taught me a hammer on. Like we were playing with another band, and I was like, hey, how do you do that thing? And they showed me, and I was like, oh. And then I practiced it and learned it, right? The first time I learned a power chord was that. Like another musician was just like, hey, like you're learning these open chords, try this. And you're like, oh, cool. That's like way quicker. And then like a harmonic of that, I think I learned from watching other bands, but like stuff like finger tapping or like pinch harmonics and stuff, I think that's stuff that has a technique that like really has to be taught. That's what I think. I don't know. Also, I don't know if I'm capable. I don't know. I definitely pursued a lot more indie rhythm based stuff. But I feel like an affinity with the type of I don't know. I think Kevin and I have similar tastes. So let's see here. We're getting there, guys. We're getting there. The tough part about this is she's supposed to be holding a bowl of soup, and then she keeps having these. The writer kept having these sections where it's like, then they're holding hands, and I'm like, well, what happens to the bowl? Like, it's so annoying. So I had to like really rationally think about it. I'm like, I guess she just puts it on her lap. Like, sometimes cartooning's fun like that. Like sequential art, when you're working with another writer, as can be really difficult because you're like, but you gave them a prop. Like, what do I do with the prop? Like, it's funny. Anyhow, I feel like it worked. It worked. It just is an unusual place to rest a bowl of soup, and I guess maybe it adds tension to the scene. Like, will the soup fall? Nice. Kevin said calling them witch notes more scary. I love that. Yeah, and I think I finally learned how to do that. I can't do it as excellently as metal guys. Like metal guitarists are some of the most proficient players in the world. Like, you know, I think to play metal is like a different, it's a beast that requires a lot of technical proficiency. And I do think there's a lot of technique in metal. I think what drew me to punk was there's technique in punk, but like I don't know, it's more accessible. Like because I always felt like I always felt like very gate kept from like the world of like extremely proficient, you know, aficionados on the instrument. You know, I never felt like I really like Zeppelin, but I never felt like, yep, I'm gonna be on the stage playing Zeppelin. Like I just never thought that would be a capability of mine. But then like I remember hearing different players and their approaches. Like my favorite lead guitarist in the world to this day is Joey Santiago and of the Pixies. And it's like I just love like really resonant, like loopy leads and stuff. But I do have that side of me that, man, I mean, you know, talent recognizes talent or not talent recognizes talent because I have no talent on guitar. Anybody practicing with a tool recognizes somebody who's far more talented at using the tool, even if like what they're making isn't as interesting. Like I think in the case of obviously Kevin, it's like it's way more interesting to me what Kevin's making than the stuff I make. But in the case of like a lot of metal that like I'm not as interested in as other genres, I still can recognize like, man, these guys are doing stuff on guitar that I can't touch, right? Like you definitely notice that even band, like there's even prog music that I absolutely don't like. Like metal resonates a lot more with me than like prog, but like there's some guitarists that just you hear and you're like it's undeniable like that their skill level is insane. A good example is like there's this band I saw recently on YouTube called Polyphia, and I don't like their music at all. Like I just don't. It was just really boring to me. But holy crap, like that guitarist Tim Henson is he's just doing stuff on guitar that like I could come nowhere near doing. Like very technically skilled. And I've seen that with artists too. You know, there's definitely artists out there who like they do finished work, and it's like even if I don't like the work, I have to recognize that like their ability with the tool is far superior to mine. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah, Kevin was saying which notes are like learning to ollie, frustrating to learn, but you said suddenly easy and you never forget. Yeah. All right, we're getting there, guys. We are getting there. There is a really interesting YouTube channel. There's this band that I really dug when I was early in college called The Darkness. And they're just like corny butt rock, like metal. But like not even, I don't know. It's hard to even call metal. It's just very corny, but really over the top and strangely kind of sincere. They did this song called I Believe in a Thing Called Love, where like the guy just does like the lead singer does this like really high pitched almost Queen level vocals. But yeah, anyhow, very corny. I enjoyed it a lot, that album, when it came out. And then I had forgotten about it for like years. And then recently I noticed on YouTube, the lead singer of it has a YouTube show called Justin Hawkins Rides Again. And it's pretty cool. He like critiques different musicians and kind of different songwriters, and has like a real like pretty knowledgeable understanding of like the guitar and just musicianship and songwriting and stuff. So it's a pretty fun channel. And I had completely forgotten about The Darkness, but The Darkness is great. It's so bad. But anyhow, he'll talk a lot about like technique and like different kind of guitar playing strategies and stuff, and songwriting strategies. Some of the theory stuff that I never really learned, I just kind of felt. What do we got here? All right, guys, we are getting there. We're getting through it. Pretty excited about how well this has gone. I think that might be one of the funnest parts about cartooning, though, is like just kind of getting in the zone and like listening to different content creators, or just like having stuff in the background that you're kind of catching up on. Makes you really appreciate Audible. Not just Audible like the like Audible as a audiobooks, but just like the audio medium. I think when you're constantly working on visual art, it's not like you can watch a lot of visual art while you're working on visual art. At least that never worked for me. And so, I don't know. It just makes me appreciate like finding different YouTube channels or different podcasts. I don't listen to podcasts as much as I used to. I feel like podcasts are really ideal for commuting. To me, when I was driving a lot, like podcasts were just the jam. Like they were so great. But now I don't really do podcasts as much as I used to. I was like really, really hooked on podcasts for a long time. But I find that like YouTube streams or channels and stuff like that are really fun to kind of have in the background while you're working. So I feel like nowadays I'm more kind of doing that, or like audiobooks. Sometimes goofy, sometimes heavy philosophy books that I have trouble comprehending, but I enjoy. Yeah, Kevin was saying musically not my thing, but I dig his YouTube channel. I dig his YouTube channel a lot too. And when it came out, it was just funny. I like, you know, there's definitely a tongue-in-cheek horribleness to it. But yeah, I like his YouTube channel, and I think what he does is pretty hilarious. But it also is kind of weird because it's like I like it, but at the same time, I remember being surrounded by music like that and just hating it so much, like when I was younger. So it's like there is this duality in me, Like I like part of what drew me to like punk and like alternative and indie stuff was just that you know, pour some sugar on me type songs, you know. It was too, there was an era where like that was it. That was all there was, and you're like, I don't know, I just ached for something that wasn't that. However, you know, like I think like a lot of things in life, as I've gotten older, I'm much less judgmental of a lot of that stuff because some of that music's just fun. It's stupid, but it's fun. I don't know if that makes sense. It's like anyhow, I as I get older, I can kind of appreciate some things that I used to detest, you know, when it was like the representation of everything I disliked. And also, I think now that some of that music's out of favor, you can kind of appreciate, at least I can kind of appreciate some of what they were doing, even though most of it was still pretty bad. But yeah, there was something funny about the way the darkness was approaching it that was hilarious to me. All right, we're getting there. We are getting there. All right. Let's finish up the room. The room. I was watching a travel blogger who got arrested in Russia. And that was wild. And then they like visited Ukraine during the recent conflict and stuff. And that was fascinating. Sometimes travel vlogs are really interesting. Like the idea of because I think this guy just literally goes all over the world, and that's what he does for like his YouTube thing. For me, it's interesting on a couple levels because I am not a person with wanderlust. Like I said, like my vacation here is like, man, this is pretty magical. Working in my house on a comic, you know, like that to me that's a perfect vacation. Is like I have time to be creative, I have space to be creative, and I enjoy going places and stuff, but it's just not something I like seek out. However, there's something really fascinating about people who do kind of do that, like they live like the hostel life and stuff. It's always kind of fascinating to me. Plus, like you can learn a lot about other cultures and stuff just watching or seeing somebody like travel in an area. And I do think something about travel is pretty good for people like recognizing other people's humanity, you know, like a good example is like I've seen in my life people who were like extremely crazy racist suddenly lose their racism that they kind of grew up with, because a lot of that is like passed down from family. Like I don't think it's like a natural thing that we're born with. Like I don't think we naturally look at other people and go like think they're less than or anything. I think that's something that has to be taught. But that erodes real quick when people actually like live in a neighborhood with people of different races and creeds and stuff. Like you'll notice that like melts away with exposure. And I do think that's one of the benefits of like travel too, is like you know, a lot of people will be very US centric. Sometimes for really justifiable means, right? Like you'll travel and then come back and be like, thank God, I'm so glad I'm here. But then sometimes you'll travel and you'll be like, oh, well, there's other places that are really awesome too, right? and I think it's harder to kind of like otherize or like demonize like, you know, countries or people, if you're familiar with them or like you've been to those countries, or hung out with those people, shared food with them, that kind of thing. So it's fun to see travel vlogs. Like it kind of reminds me of like when I was a kid, I really enjoyed like Michael Palin from Monty Python had like this amazing, it might have been one of the first like big travel shows, but he had a whole series where he'd like travel around the world and like eat food with different cultures and tribes and stuff and like different weird nations. And it was just fascinating. It was like an interesting show. And then of course it was Michael Palin. So it was awesome because, you know, he's one of the funniest people on the planet. Kevin was saying, I love that travel stuff. Oh, Kevin was saying, I like that he digs deep into stuff I like Husker Du, Black Sabbath, Motorhead. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think one of the most recent ones I saw, he was like, yeah, and he was like talking about like the whole area of where Husker Du like blew up, and yeah, he seems to have good taste in music, which is a good thing. And then Kevin was saying, I love travel stuff, kind of dying to get back to making my art and adventure videos. Yeah, I like travel too, but I don't think I have the bug for it. Like I am a down adventurer when presented with the opportunity, but I don't seek the opportunity. Although exploring and doing that kind of stuff is fun. It's not a main pursuit. I will say one of my passions though with that, and this is the thing I'm saddest about not going with the family on their trip. That drive to Utah, you go across all these weird like curio shops and like Americana kind of stops and stuff, like those strange truck stop, you know, two-headed alligator type places. And I adore that. Like, I love like kitschy, like truck stop kind of stuff. Like there is something really fun about that on a road trip. Like I can't quantify why that is so fun for me, but things like that, or like stopping and seeing a giant dinosaur statue, just strange things, I think are the funnest part of travel for me. And then food is always good. Like it's always fun to try different foods and stuff. But like I would seek out like those kind of stranger like the stops along the way to like the thing I love about those travel channels is more like the stops along the way to the destination. Like that to me is a lot more interesting. You know, like just the weird, you know, oddities that show up around are pretty fun. Tankersley said, just do it, Kevin. Do it, Kevin. Okay. I do think if that's a passion, you got to prioritize it, you know? I don't know why I never got really hit by that bug, because I do enjoy travel. I just don't seek it. My sister is the opposite. Like, for her, that was like a huge pursuit. Like she lived in Australia for a couple years, like, you know, has lived in Europe for a little bit, like lived for, you know, half a year to years in different countries and stuff. And just kind of has that bug and that interest. I just never, I don't know. I like to live in the country of my mind. The country, the comic country. Okay, here we go. Honestly, if I didn't have a deadline, I probably would have gone on that trip though with the family because it would have been fun, and I do enjoy that, especially with the kid. It's a lot of fun. I think especially if the trips are with your kid, it's like it's extra fun because you get to kind of see it through their eyes too. I always feel weird traveling to cool places without my kid because I'm like, I'll feel like this is amazing, but like I don't know, my kid should be there, you know. Okay, here we go. We're gonna merge visible. Look at this, you guys. Look, boom. Okay, shading. You guys walked me through it. We finished shading a whole page. I will color this on a stream later tonight. Kevin said time and money are stopping me right now. Yeah, that's going to be the limits. Right now, for me, the thing stopping me is a deadline. And the money is a part of it, too. Kevin said, I've toured through Utah a bunch. There's some spots there that look like you're driving through a 1960s Star Trek set. And he said, touring and living abroad got the adventure and exploring hooks in me. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, guys, I'm going to call it. We're going to continue this again in like an hour or so. So if you're around at like 1 a.m, come back because I have to go work out, eat, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to color this page before I sleep. Thanks for hanging out with me. It's great seeing you, Kevin. I really appreciate you stopping by, Tankersley. Thank you to, let's see here. Who else do we have? Oh, yeah, Jim was here. So thanks, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys on the next live stream. Yeah, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me while I do art, and I hope you're enjoying your break if you are on break, and I hope you will have a lovely Thanksgiving if I don't see you before then, but I probably will see you tonight. All right, I will see you guys later, and yeah, see you on the next stream.